Good evening. Today I am joined by the Devil's Interval to tell 6 stories about scary things that happen in bathrooms. After hearing the 6 stories here, please visit his channel to hear the other 3. Enjoy. Number 1. The Dark. I always walk around in the dark. I prefer it. I live alone and my eyes adjust really quickly in the dark. So when the sun goes down, I just walk around the house without turning any of the lights on. I even go to the bathroom with the lights off. Again, I live by myself, so what difference does it make? My aim is pretty good, but if I miss, then I'm just cleaning up my own floor. I don't have to worry about messing someone else's floor up. But I kid mostly, I don't really miss. Probably the scariest thing that ever happened to me is the one time that I decided to go against my pattern of walking around in the dark. I had gone to bed a little earlier than usual that night because it had been a very long day. I was very exhausted. By the time I stripped down and jumped in the sack, I was so tired that I probably fell asleep less than a minute after my head touched the pillow. I had to pee. I felt it when I was asleep. It woke me up and I noticed the urge, even though it wasn't as immediate as it could have been. I was still tired and I decided that I could fall back asleep rather easily. So, I just decided to drift back off. I was out again instantly. Anyone who has done this knows that it doesn't really work that way. I mean, I fell back asleep quickly, but I didn't sleep very well. I had to pee so badly that although I was exhausted and trying to sleep, I could only dream about going pee. And those of you who've had pee dreams know they are the worst. You dream about going to a toilet, and you pee, and pee, and pee, but you never find any relief. You just have to find some other place to go pee, and if you do, it's just the same thing, again. I woke up again later, and although I was still tired, I looked at the clock and saw that it had only been 3 hours since I'd gone to bed in the first place. I realized I was not going to get any good rest until I got up and went to the bathroom. I decided that 2 minutes of stumbling around and getting to finally pee would just make the hours and hours afterwards that I would be sleeping that much more enjoyable. So I got out of bed, and I was so exhausted that I felt like I was going to fall back over. I lived alone, in a first-story apartment, so no one was going to see me walking around naked in the dark. Yeah, I actually thought about those ridiculous thoughts as I stumbled my way into the hallway. I went into the bathroom, stood over the toilet, and was about to go pee. But then I thought maybe I should just go ahead and check to make sure the toilet lid was up. Yeah, I am a guy, but I have one of those fluffy covers on my toilet lid, and occasionally it falls down. The last thing in the world I needed was a wet toilet seat cover. So I reached down and discovered that it was closed. I lifted the lid up, and then it fell right back down again. Like I mentioned, it didn't always stay up. I lifted it again, and this time it stayed up. So I went pee finally, and it felt great. But then the damn lid fell right in midstream. I cursed and realized I had to stop the flow. It's a dreadful feeling to do that, as any guy could tell you. But I also knew I had to go ahead and take off the cover and put it in the laundry. So I lifted the toilet and finished peeing. Then, I decided to go ahead and turn the light on so I could get the cover off. I flipped the light on and looked over at the other side of the bathroom. I had one of those translucent bathroom windows that was opposite of the toilet. It was ajar. I always left it slightly open because it had a screen and I liked my bathroom to be cool. Although it was translucent, I still was able to make out that someone was standing there at the window, watching me as I was doing my business. When he noticed that I saw him, rather than worry, I could tell that a smile spread across his face. He waved a knife in front of the window, and I heard him say to me, "You got fucking lucky." He then turned and left. I called the police out of fear, but there was nothing that anyone could do about it. Although I was able to see the man was there, and he had a knife, I couldn't make out his features well enough to give a description. It was a wholly terrifying situation. I mean, how long had he been there? And what had he been planning to do if I had simply gone back to bed?
I work for one of Australia's biggest telecommunication companies. In their operational security department, my team is unlike all of the others in that we work out at a special restricted site since we handle very sensitive data. Every morning I have to drive through a security gate and have my pass vetted by one of the 2 guards, park in the nearly empty lot, and then pass through 2 more security doors to get by another guard before I even make it to the stairs. The buildings on the site were built in the 70s and 80s. As far as I can tell, they haven't been updated since. The lights are old fluorescent tubes with ancient air conditioning ducts, spewing dust onto our heads, and the only lift is a cranky fire hazard that grumbles its way up and down the cables. Luckily, my team is on the first floor, so it's not too stressful to climb 1 flight of stairs. The bathrooms are especially disturbing. As you can probably imagine, despite the company's best efforts to be inclusive in its hiring practices, there are very few women in the building. The men's toilets on the floor are large and have been recently renovated, but the few women have been relegated to an ancient room beside the photocopiers. Accessing that bathroom is particularly strange, in that you have to pass through 2 lockable doors, the inner of which swings outward and the outer of which swings inward, and traps you between them for a few seconds. The space is so small you have to close one in order to open the other, and there are no lights in that tiny space. Each of the doors has a narrow window in it, with the type of glass that makes figures look as though they've been blurred. On that particular day, I was working late. There had been a minor security incident, and I was on a long phone call, working through it with my manager, 2 of my teammates, and a few other people in other departments. It was heading for winter, so it was getting dark early, and the sun had set by the time the incident was solved. I needed to finish up a few work emails, so I stayed seated at my desk as my teammates packed up and left. Needless to say, I was now alone on the floor. I finished my emails and spent some time cleaning up my inbox. You'd be surprised how quickly unread emails pile up after hours, and it's always bugged me to have too many. Now, the 2 doors leading to the women's toilets had a very specific pair of squeaks, always followed by the heavy clunk of a door hitting the frame too hard, and it surprised me to hear one and then the other grudgingly open and close. It was rare to hear those doors even during daylight, but right then I was pretty sure I was alone on the floor. Surely I was the only woman. I waited, breathless, for any sound. I turned my chair around and watched the outer door, clearly visible over the top of the cubicle walls, waiting for a repeat performance. It stayed mute and motionless, but I couldn't bring myself to either turn around and resume working or to get up and go and investigate. While I was occupied watching a door that wouldn't move, I heard the distinct tapping of feet coming down the stairs from one of the upper floors. Assuming it was someone else going home, I ignored it, continuing to focus on the silent door. The footsteps on the stairs paused halfway down, and this time I spun around subtly to glance at whoever was standing there on the stairs, only to discover that no one was there either. At this point, I was ready to nope the fuck out of there, when there was suddenly a third sound. There's a large plaster dividing wall down the middle of the building, with a walkway punched through, approximately halfway along, and I sit with that walkway to my direct left, and my back to the main aisle between the cubicles. As I stared at the stairs, trying to logic my way through these impossibilities, through the plaster walkway, I heard a distant whistled tune. It was so out of place on the silent floor that despite the cheerful sound, my blood chilled and I started shaking. The whistling got closer, heading for the gap in the plaster wall, and my heart hammered against my ribs. My mouth went dry, and tears formed as whatever it was made its way towards me. The bathroom doors banged again behind me, first one, then the other. I stood with a startled yelp and knocked over my chair, turning to look at the loud doors. My legs were shaking and my fingers were like ice as I stood in the middle of an empty floor and just waited. Even the smell of the place had changed. The sense of 30-year-old dust and layers of people were gone, and instead it was replaced with a hard metallic tang of unidentifiable origin. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, the lights in my row flickered and took on that purplish demi-glow of sulky fluorescent lights. The bathroom doors audibly smashed again, and I collapsed onto the floor, skidding across the old carpeting to shelter under my desk in the darkness. Clutching my knees, I closed my eyes, tears falling freely as that distant whistling picked up again, and an equally distant phone started to ring. Something thundered up and down the stairs, invisible feet beating every step, and the whistling started getting closer and closer. It remained cheery and unperturbed, despite the elephantine level of noise from the stairs and the awkward banging of the bathroom doors, and I huddled further under my desk as the sinisterly cheerful noise passed by. Whatever it was stopped next to my desk and I held my breath. All of a sudden the lights came back on. The darkness disappeared from the floor. The bathroom doors remained blissfully quiet, and the stairs were apparently unoccupied. It took me almost 10 minutes to brave crawling out from under my desk, and still shaky, I righted my chair and sat down to shut my computer off. As my body slowly calmed, I tried to rationalize what had happened. Wind creating the whistling noise, weird air pressure currents that made the doors bang, ancient wiring causing the lights to turn off. I packed up my laptop and headed downstairs cautiously. I said goodnight to the guard at the front desk, and he looked up from the poor quality CTV screens with a friendly smile. "You guys up there are always working so late. At least you're not the last one to leave tonight." Frowning, I wandered over and looked at the CTV screens and gasped. Standing there unmoving in the middle of the first floor landing was a blurry figure. The screen flicked automatically over to another view, and after 10 seconds or so flicked back to that first camera, and the figure was gone. As I watched, the lights on that floor went out again. The guard frowned with obvious confusion. That's odd. It shouldn't be turning off if someone's up there. He glanced at me. After all, the lights up there are motion controlled.
Number 3. Playground restroom. The scariest memory I have of childhood happened in the restroom of a playground. I was 11 years old at the time, and I was walking home from school. I was a latchkey kid. I really had to pee really bad, and began to feel like I would not be able to make it home in time. I hadn't gone at school because I really hated using public bathrooms. And yeah, I had this odd habit of doing my best to hold it in the entire day, so I could only go when I got home. This didn't always work though, and I often ended up breaking down and having to use the restroom at school. I know that's not good for your bladder, but I was 11 years old. I really didn't know. On this day, when I realized that there was no way I was going to be able to make it home, I was passing by one of the local playgrounds. They had public bathrooms, and I felt I was fortunate that I was getting to one in time. So I ran, holding myself to keep from peeing, into the bathroom and immediately into one of the stalls. I'm a boy, but I've always preferred peeing in the stall. That was one of the big reasons I didn't like using public restrooms. I didn't like the idea of people being able to see what I was doing. I got into the stall and took my book bag and put it on the floor. I then turned, pulled down my pants, and spent about 2 minutes just getting the pee out. I heard some noises behind me, but I didn't think too much about them. If someone else was using the bathroom, then they wouldn't be able to see me in the stall. I had nothing to worry about. I turned around when I was done. When I did, I saw that someone was standing outside of my stall. I could tell that they were facing the door, as I could see their feet pointed towards me. Then, I saw an arm reach under the door, and it grabbed my book bag and pulled it out. It felt like my heart stopped. Then, after standing there for a moment, the person turned and left the restroom. I was terrified. The person was obviously an adult, and I was an 11-year-old boy. There was no way I was going to confront him. He obviously was not trying to hurt me because he could have easily done that. He just took my bag and left. I remained in that stall for a very long time though. I was too freaked out by what had happened, and I didn't want to risk running into whoever it was that stole my bag. Plus, my parents wouldn't be worried about me since I was a latchkey kid, and they didn't get home until after 5. When I finally got the nerve to leave, I exited the bathroom and very cautiously looked around the park. There was no sign of any adult or my book bag. I walked home, feeling very shaken up. Although I was grateful to be safe, I was also an 11-year-old kid. I kept looking all around me, worried that whoever took my bag might be following me, or something. Nothing happened though, and I was safe getting the rest of the way home. When I got home, it was rather late, and the sun was going down. I'll never forget that. I'll also never forget what I saw sitting on my front porch. My book bag, with all of its contents strewn about the ground, was lying on the porch, and the front door was open. I looked down at my watch, and it was only 4:30. Plus my parents' cars were not home. I don't know how long I stood there, terrified beyond explanation. Whoever took my bag had gotten my key. I hadn't even considered that when he had taken the bag, that both my key was in there, and that my address was listed on the inside of my school books. What finally got me to move was when I saw a grown male step into the doorway. He saw me looking at him, and appeared surprised to see me. Before he could do a thing, I began screaming and running over to my next-door neighbor's house. It only took a moment before the housewife next door came out of her house, and she saw what was happening. She saw me, and then she looked past me, obviously seeing the man who broke in, fleeing my house. She grabbed me and pushed me behind her, and then pulled me into her house. She called my parents and the police. I felt so guilty for letting my bag get stolen. The guy got away, and he had taken some valuable items. My parents were not mad at me, thank God. They understood it was all not my fault. But even so, I was terrified for the longest time. Whenever I went to sleep at night, I always looked at my window, expecting to see the face of the man who broke into my home and got away clean. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. If you like this video, please make sure to let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, make sure to hit the button next to my Garfield-like friend to be informed of new content. I'd like to thank The Devil's Interval for taking part in this collaboration. I'd also like to thank him for his patience, as he was extremely patient in waiting for me to finish up my half of this. Please make sure to visit his channel for the other half of the collaboration, and to subscribe to his channel. This past Saturday, me and one of my subscribers, Rebecca Adams, appeared on the Jason Rosenberg Show on AM 1590 in Chicago. We talked about an upcoming trip we are taking to Waverly Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. This is a supposedly haunted insane asylum, and we intend to spend the night in this haunted place. And our experience will be covered both on the show and on this channel. To hear Rebecca and I on the show, follow the link in the description and play the file dated April 30. The portion of the show we appear on starts around 20 minutes into the broadcast. I also want to take this moment to thank both Jason Rosenberg and Dave Gordon for having us on the show. It was very fun, and I really look forward to our trip. I also want to thank all of you for showing some love to everyone I have collaborated with as of late. It means a lot to me because I really like to expose new talent to a larger audience. I have had a really large amount of collaborations in the past few weeks, and I really hope you have all enjoyed them. Although I still have some collaborations on deck, I want to let you all know I do have some solo videos on the way too. I thank you all for the dedication you've shown to me and to the people I've collaborated with. And whatever you do, don't forget to make sure to check in the closet and check under your bed, because you never know where Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.